Hey everybody, Jake here from Bearded Gear, and I am ready to do my full review on this little slut. This is the Rogers Design Slim Utility, but it's the OEM Slim Utility, and I still haven't found out exactly how many of these were made, but basically this is a production version, although I think it's a relatively small run, of the Rogers, or Richard Rogers Slim Utility. Now, oftentimes, people refer to this knife as the SLUT, because if you mash up the SL from Slim and the UT from Utility, you're left with SLUT. No, that's kind of how that came to be. But this is a knife that I picked up from my buddy, the old man, Bob Poncho, over on Instagram. I traded him my Chavez, all blacked out, 229 Redención for that. And it's not a trade that I regret making at all. But I don't think this knife is going to be a forever keeper either. In fact, I know it's not. I've already officially traded this to Kevin, Left EDC, so you'll be seeing this over on his channel real soon. And I traded it for a Benchmade Anthem, which is on its way to me. And I've reviewed a Benchmade Anthem before, but it was a loaner, and I didn't really get to use it as much as I would have liked to really feel like I was properly reviewing it. And it was a while back, and so it's a knife that I've wanted to revisit, and I've just always kind of wanted to have one. I liked it enough that I think even in the end of that review I talked about that I'd probably end up with one eventually. That feels like forever ago in a lot of ways, but it's really only a few months ago. Go through a lot of knives these days. Anyway, so the fact that I have already traded this knife isn't really a slam on this knife, because I've actually really liked this knife, and we're going to talk through that. But I think it's more of a reflection on what the market has done to this knife, because I assume just because of how limited it is. So these were produced by Bestech. Bestech is a really good OEM. They also make knives like this for Joseph Viro. This is the Viro Axon, and I adore this knife so far. My first impressions I'll probably film tomorrow. But they're also involved with Adam Purvis, and they do a number of cool projects for US designers, and this is one of those. And these, I think, from what I've seen, originally retailed for about $250. And that seems pretty fair to me, frankly, for how nice this knife is. If you look at how well milled this titanium is with these grooves, that's probably my favorite part of the knife, frankly. It's gorgeous. Absolutely stunning finishing on here. I think it looks great, and it adds great grip, and there's a lot that's happening there, but it's also M390, and it's a nice blade profile. It's a pretty thin stock, and then the grind on it brings it down nice and thin, so it's a good cutter. I like the kind of reverse tanto sheep's foot thing that's going on here. It's just, there's a lot that's really nice about it. The anodizing is all really nice. I'm not usually into purple, but this kind of blurple, kind of faded, between blue and purple, it looks really cool, and it matches. Even the lock bar inside is matched. All of the titanium, other than the scales, of course, are this really cool anodized color that just kind of gives it a pop, where otherwise I think it would look really muted. If you look close as well, in this blade pocket, there's milling in there too, which is really cool. So it's just a very different and interesting knife, and there's a lot that I really like about it. It's also a cool size for me. This is definitely in the secondary knife category for me. I've only carried it as a secondary, never as a primary, because it's just really small and slim, and it fits that roll so well. So let's kind of break down where I'm ending up on this knife, and why ultimately I feel so positively about it, but I've still just traded it. So this knife ergonomically is a big win for me. The ergos on this handle are phenomenal. It's just super neutral. It's got enough of a kind of swell out to the back where it doesn't really taper down. It retains its kind of full size, and it just fits my hand well. I get 4 fingers on it, just barely. It's not a big knife. Definitely on the smaller end of the spectrum, but I get a nice full purchase on it, and because of all of this texture that's milled into these scales, it just really locks in for me. and it feels great in hand. It's not like an aggressive texture where it feels overly rough, but it feels locked in. There's no jimping anywhere on this knife, not a single place, and I love that. I don't like jimping. I'd prefer to not have it. So the fact that on this one I don't have it anywhere, it just feels really good, and it doesn't need it. This knife is locked in. It's not going anywhere. They've put texture in an intelligent way, and it's shaped right. It doesn't need jimping to stay in my hand. So I like that. Ergonomically, it's great. Hammer grip, saber grip, phenomenal. Draw cut, really, really good because, again, super neutral. That also means reverse grip, very, very good. Reverse grip draw cut even, very comfortable. So no matter what orientation I put this knife into my hand in, it's just really comfortable. So ergos are a big, big win here. The action is also, I wouldn't call this action stellar, but it's fun. So the way that I open it, because it's got kind of a slot, not a hole, it doesn't go all the way through, but these slots on both sides, I just middle finger flick it 99.9% of the time. I suppose you could also slow roll it with that show side slot. It doesn't, for me, really thumb deploy all that well. I can get it, you just witnessed it, but it's not a reliable method of deployment just because the way that I have to get my thumb in there, it's not ideal for me, but it works. And so really, I find myself just middle finger flicking it pretty much all of the time, and it's a lot of fun in that way. On closure, it's not like guillotine drop shutty, but it's fairly smooth. It's also, I need to put a little more lube in here, I think, but it's not as smooth as it has been the entire time. I'll clean it up before it goes in the mail to Kev. But yeah, it's a fun action. It feels good. It's not special in the action department, but it is a little bit different in the sense that it has the slots. It's funny, the only other knife that I held up also has slots, and so it's a method of deployment that doesn't go all the way through but works like a thumb hole, but you open it the same way as you do basically a knife with a hole. It feels largely the same, a little bit different just because your finger doesn't pass all the way through, but functionally I like it, and I think aesthetically it looks really cool because the blade just doesn't have like the void in it like it typically would if you had a hole pass all the way through. And the fact that they've milled those lines in there does give me just a little bit more traction to push off of since it isn't a very deep groove. So yeah, deployment, action, all that is good and fun. It's not amazing, but it's enjoyable. So what should we talk about next? We've talked ergos, we've talked action. Let's talk carry. I think carry is probably like categorically the best thing about this knife. Maybe ergos too. It might be kind of neck and neck because I really do like the ergos. But carry on this sucker, it is very slim. It's called the slim utility, right? So it's really, really tiny. I've loaned out my bug out to a buddy. He's had it for a while, so I don't have it here to compare, but it's about bug out thickness, I would guess. I can't imagine it's much thinner or thicker than a bug out is. It's just really, really slim. But because it's full titanium construction, it doesn't feel insubstantial or unsubstantial at all. Because of its thinness, it still feels like kind of confidence inspiring. But it's just really, really slim. It's also slender all the way through this way, right? Like this part is very slender and it's not very long. It's a smallish knife. And so you're small in every direction, which is just going to make it very comfortable in pocket. Plus, this titanium show side is milled out. Even though it's pretty thin titanium, and I think a lot of makers probably wouldn't take the step to mill out titanium that's already starting on the thinner end like this, it's a full big pocket where they've removed like all the material possible out of that internal show scale. And then on the lock side, they can't do that because the lock bar is there. It's a liner lock, but behind the liner lock bar, there's still a sizable pocket milled out. So the fact that they took the time to mill that much material out of an already small, slim knife, I think is a really good thing. This knife is very lightweight, and looking at it, seeing that it's all made of metal, you pick it up, it feels a little lighter than it looks, or than you assume it was, at least for me. Plus all of the components on here are titanium as well, from the clip to the standoffs for the clip and the back spacer and all the hardware. It's all titanium. So it's just a really nice construction that ends up in the knife being pretty lightweight. So you couple that with how slim it is, and then with how nice this pocket clip is, it's a winning combo in terms of carry. The clip is set up on these little standoffs back here. So it's not a loop over style deep carry clip, but it carries a lot deeper than a lot of loop over clips that I've experienced. It's just a really intelligent clip construction. It makes me think of some of the Olamic knives that do a similar thing. They set the clip up on some standoffs in the back instead of having the clip be bent or machined. And so you get this nice, good size gap between clip and knife, right? And then you've got this gradual taper down, and you've got a lip up. And it works well. You also might have noticed in Ergos, I didn't even mention the pocket clip, and that's because in my hand, I really just genuinely don't even feel it that much. I can kind of feel that, like, I guess the knife has a little bit more size where the pocket clip is. It feels a little bit thicker, but it just feels truly like part of the knife. It's not poking or prodding me in any weird way. It's comfortable for my hand. So the fact that it carries quite deep for not being an actual like loop over clip, and that it looks so good, it's a winner of a clip for me. So that's a big strong suit. Carry, like I said, I think carry is probably where this knife shines the most. Ergos would be what follow that. And then the last thing that I typically talk about is cutting performance. Cutting performance on this guy, I have found, is really good. I haven't used this knife very hard, and there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I realized pretty quickly into like when I started experiencing this knife, having it in hand, that it probably wasn't going to be a real long-term keeper for me. So I didn't want to gum it up too bad. But also, the type of knife that this is, being kind of a gentleman's slim, like handsome little knife, the types of cutting tasks that I do with knives like these aren't very hard. I have opened some boxes, like packaging, Amazon packaging. I've opened some envelopes, like literally cutting through paper. I've processed a little bit of cardboard for the dumpster, probably realistically only about 3 boxes. And I did slice one apple for my daughter with it. So I've done enough to feel how this blade performs, certainly, but I haven't hard used this knife. I haven't tried to find its limits. It still looks every bit as pristine as it did when I got it. So I haven't done anything to damage this. I've just done some fairly light duty stuff. I haven't even done any zip ties with it, I don't think. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I haven't. So anyway, it's done really well. I like it. Like I mentioned at the beginning, this blade stock is nice and thin. And so when you get a blade stock that's thin and you get a nice intelligent flat grind that comes down to it, it ends up cutting well. I find that flat grinds for me do really, really well for passing through like continuous sheets of cardboard and stuff like that. And it did great on the apple that I sliced. I also, like when I'm slicing an apple, a lot of the time I do kind of like draw cuts toward my thumb. And the way that this knife ergonomically worked for processing a small piece of fruit like that, it was really intuitive and nice. And it's a good cutter, both in the way that it indexes in my hand and in the way that the blade is ground and shaped and all of that. It's also got a nice workable tip for the type of blade profile that's on here. A lot of sheep's foot knives, I feel like people think they're sacrificing a tip, and sure, it's not the stabbiest knife ever, but in terms of like getting into packaging and making those like incisions to start a cut, it worked great. There's plenty of tip on there to pierce into things. So yeah, it cuts well. It carries phenomenally. It's one of the better knives in pocket that I've experienced in a long time. Like if you wanted me to rate this compared to other knives in terms of how comfortable it is in pocket and how good it carries for me, like how much it disappears and is just comfortable, right? It's got to be like top 3. Like I struggle to think of knives that are better than it. Maybe the Bug Out. But the Bug Out is just like stupid light because it's made of plastic. If I tried to name another titanium construction knife that was as easy to carry as this, or as comfortable to carry, as nice to carry for my preferences, I don't think there is one. I think this is the best carrying knife that I've experienced in a long time. Which is funny, you would think, as I'm saying all these things, genuinely, every last one of them is very, very positive. So that brings us to like, why am I selling it, right? If I like the Ergos, I love the way it carries, I like the way it cuts. The action is fun enough that I enjoy it, and it's like, it's pleasant, it's good. Why am I trading it? And the answer is frankly pretty simple. This is one of those cases where this knife is just valued higher than I think I categorize it in my mind. Like, I love so much about this knife, but these are going for like $450. I traded a knife that technically, in terms of secondary prices, was worth a little less than this one is going for. Although new, it was worth a significant percentage more than this one was. And it's just this weird thing where, like, to me, this knife at the $250 original price makes a ton of sense. And if somebody offered me a trade on it that was worth $250, I wouldn't be into that. I would have no interest. This is nicer than a $250 knife to me, but it's maybe like a $300 knife. Even then, if someone offered me a $300 knife to trade for it, I wouldn't accept that because I'm in it for a knife that Chavez was worth more than $300 to me. These are going for like $450, which is astronomical compared to what they originally went for. If you're going on percentages, it's almost doubled in value. In fact, I think some have gone for the 500 mark, meaning it's hit double its value. I don't see it as that. And granted, I'm not in it for that in terms of how much I paid, because I got a decent deal on the Chavez, but the Chavez is worth probably about $350 in that configuration. It's a gorgeous knife. And I don't know, it feels weird to me to keep something around that to me is worth about $300 when I could trade it for a Benchmade Anthem, which is a knife that originally retailed for over $400, whatever they were. And now they're discontinued, so they may become harder and harder to get, and I kind of feel like I should seize the moment on that one and just bring it in. And it's just this weird thing where it's like, I love this knife, but I'm also not like over the moon excited about it, which is weird. Maybe I'm jaded at this point. Maybe it's just a timing thing, but like, I love it to death. And I think if I had bought one of these brand new for $250, it would probably be a forever keeper for me, because I'd feel like, wow, what an amazing knife for $250. But the way I came into it was trading a knife that was also kind of special to me and was worth well above that price point. And I know that it can get knives that are above that price point. And so it's playing a different game than I think it was meant to. And say what you will about that. That's just kind of my thought process. And that's where I've ended up on it. And I don't think I'm necessarily going to regret it. I'll miss this knife just like I miss a lot of others. But I doubt there's going to be like a hole in my heart. And I'm going to find myself in a couple weeks like scouring to pay $450 for one because I miss it so much that all of a sudden it's worth that to me. I just don't really see that happening. What I do hope happens is that Richard Rogers does a lot more of this. I don't know whether he'll do more runs of this exact knife. I don't know whether he'll do more runs with Bestech of similar knives. What I can say with a good degree of confidence is that if he does another project with Bestech, whether it's just another run of exactly this, or if it's a bigger version of this or something, like just another one of his designs, I'll probably do what I can to be in on that pre-order or to get one when they come out, because at $250, I'd be thrilled to have this knife. But it's going for more than that, so it gets the waters get a little muddy. Anyway, I love this knife. It's very good. I can absolutely recommend it. Not that that's that meaningful, I think, in this moment, as of at least when this will go live, because these are really hard to get. So me saying, yes, I love it, I think it's fantastic. I also don't necessarily recommend paying $450 for one. I wouldn't. I don't feel like this is $450 worth of knife. It's very good, but when I compare it to other knives in that range, it's like I'd rather have the ones that retail at $450, not that have been inflated to hit $450. But I'm also someone who just doesn't generally play that game very much. I don't go after sprints or exclusives or small runs that I missed when they get inflated, unless it's very rare circumstances. And even then, I've found that the times I've done that, I've never kept one. I've ended up getting back out of it for as much as I was in it for, because it feels weird to me to have a knife that just I'm in for more than they were supposed to be priced at. Other people are fine with that, and they see value a different way, and that's fine. But like for me, the Vero Axon, I got this on the pre-order, luckily, and I paid exactly what this knife is supposed to cost. And I wouldn't buy another one for more than this, because now this knife costs that for me. I know what it went for new, and I paid it, like, but other people would have no problem paying $400 or $500 for one of these. I just never would. It's a great knife. This is also not a $400 or $500 knife. It's just not, to me. So I guess that'll be that. I love the Rogers Slim Utility, and I think that'll shine through in my talking points of the things that I love about this knife, because it's pretty much all of them. It's genuinely fantastic. So I guess that'll be where the best place is to leave my full review. This is an absolutely fantastic knife that I love, and I still just traded. So there you have it. Thanks guys for watching. This has been the SLUT full review, and if you want to see more of it, it'll be on Kevin's channel soon, Lefty EDC, so check that out. Anyways, thanks guys, I appreciate you watching.